Assalamu alaikum. We're just waiting for Facebook. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to today's Khatam Khwajagan, our weekly zikr. On this, the 20th of August 2020, which is also the 1st of Muharram 1442. So I would like to wish everybody a very happy Hijri New Year or Islamic New Year. This is the start of the calendar. It marks 1442 years since Prophet Muhammad's migration, Hijra, to Medina. This is when the Muslim calendar starts. Wa alaikum assalam, Rami. How are you? So, Muharram is one of the most sacred months in the calendar for Muslims, because it not only marks the Hijra, which is obviously, this is foundational. The migration of Prophet Muhammad and his companions to Medina is when Islam started, really. It really started, and it started to become established as a community, not just as people who had embraced Islam within a society, but the whole community in Medina started to be built around Islam. So this was really critical, and this is why the Muslim calendar begins by remembering this migration. But also the month of Muharram is a time that we don't just celebrate some people are a bit confused about the Muslim New Year, because they compare it to the Chinese New Year or the English, the Western New Year, when people will celebrate and they'll have big parties and sometimes do a lot of things that us Muslims would prefer not to do because they are haram activities even. But they get very excited around the time of their New Year. Whereas for Muslims it's a little bit different. Of course we wish each other a happy New Year, and we pray that this year that we are starting and we're beginning today will bring better things than the past year, and it will be a very blessed year. And there are various du'as that we can and should read to ask for this blessing. But at the same time, other people over the backgrounds, they get a little bit confused and say, but how come you're not getting really excited and celebrating in the same ways that they might? But there's a few reasons for this. One of them is that as a year passes and a new year comes, we realize that another year of our life has passed away. Wa alaikum salam, Kamran. Another year of our life passes away. That we're getting older, that we're actually getting closer to our death. So we reflect, we think about this. This is one reason. Another reason is because we realize that in this particular month, on the 10th of this month, Prophet Muhammad lost his grandson, his beloved grandson, Imam Hussain, at Karbala. And although this is focused on more maybe within the Shia tradition, it's not simply a Shia thing that Shia people remember. All Muslims feel sad about the loss of Imam Hussain and his companions, who made a stand for justice and liberty, for their human rights. Then they made a stand against oppression. And this is universal. Even people who aren't Muslims will look at this and take inspiration from it. But I mean, Imam Hussain, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, was the beloved grandson of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He loved both Hassan and Hussein. And there are hadiths even within the Sunni tradition as well, which highlight just how important Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein were to him. So it's not just Shia Muslims who lament the loss of Imam Hussein. Actually, last year, not long after the Islamic New Year started, within a month or so of it, I made a visit to a conference at Abu Husseiniya, which is the shrine of Imam Hussain in Kabbalah. I was invited there for a conference on human rights, and this was different people joined this conference who were both Sunnis and Shias, scholars from around the world. So although, again, you know, I mean, it is a Shia community predominantly who looks after the shrine, but although there may be Sunnis who help out as well. I mean, I saw Sunnis there as well. You know, it wasn't just Shia people. But even though it is predominantly looked after by Shia Muslims, Imam Hussain is of importance to us all. And there was not just people attending the conference who were Sunni scholars, but I saw also people who were just visiting and making ziyarat to Imam Hussain who were also Sunnis. I think we have a lot of these misconceptions that spread within the both within the media and also even within the Muslim community. That people think, oh, this is Sunni, this is Shia. And sometimes people, they take them too far, and they end up becoming matters of hatred, and people, you know, really falling out over these things. Now, Sunnis generally commemorate Muharram different to Shias. We don't necessarily follow the same activities, and even Shias themselves vary between different groups. Sunnis vary as well. But at the same time, I mean, no one who is a Muslim can not be upset and lament the loss of Imam Hussain, and also at the same time celebrate the fact that he stood his ground against oppression, even though he and his companions paid the ultimate price for doing so. And this is something that all Muslims today can take inspiration from. I mean, we do have a lot of places in the world where people are suffering oppression, and where Muslims are suffering oppression. Some of these countries are not run by Muslim governments, and sadly some of them are. So we should reflect that Imam Hussain and his companions stood against oppression, and in doing so they were also following Imam Hussein's grandfather, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and his companions, who throughout their lives also stood against oppression, and they suffered oppression in Mecca, which is why they made the Hijra to Medina in the first place. When Muhammad ﷺ, his hometown was Mecca. He loved Mecca. And, you know, a lot of people, they don't want to leave their hometowns. And, you know, it's evidence how much Prophet Muhammad ﷺ loved Mecca because of how he treated the people when he came back to Mecca some years later with an army of 10,000 soldiers. But they didn't shed a drop of blood. Instead, the leadership of Mecca came out and met with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his close companions, and they come to an agreement, and the city was handed over to them. And, you know, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ could have enacted retribution upon the people in Mecca, but he chose not to. And this is to his credit, and it is something which, you know, I just wish people focused on these things a bit more. Because, I mean, you look at how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he came back to Mecca, and how he gave a general amnesty to the people in Mecca, and he didn't enact retribution upon them. And then you compare that to some of these so-called Muslim leaders now, who they are ruthless in what they have done, and treated people very cruelly. I mean, this is not from the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at all. So it's really, really important that we look back at this history. And the first of Muharram, when Muharram is the time that we begin the new year, the new Hijri year, which itself marks the 1,442 years since the time of the first migration between Mecca and Medina. I think it is a good time to rethink about our history and what has taken place. And the real sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, it's not how people dress. It's not how they keep their facial hair. The real sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is how he lived. How he cared for people. How he loved people. And all people. It didn't matter whether they were Muslims or not. You can cry if you want to cry. I mean, if you're moved to cry, you can cry. I know when I visited Kabbalah, I cried. And I didn't because it was what other people were doing, but I couldn't help it. I mean, when I visited the shrine of Imam Hussain, I was blown away by the power I felt in that place. Now, I wasn't following any particular customs or anything except showing love and respect. But when I actually approached the shrine, I was reading salawat on my tasbih, and I just stopped. Not even that close to the shrine, so I mean maybe 2 meters away from the shrine. I just stopped. I was so overwhelmed by the power that I felt at the actual grave of Imam Hussain. And some of what I experienced I cannot explain. I cannot put it into words. It's an experience, and if you can go, please visit. You will, maybe you will understand. If you have an experience, you will understand something of what I experienced. But sorry, the term "blown away", it's an English phrase. What I mean is I was just overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed. It was sensory overwhelmed, also internally overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I was overwhelmed with what I was feeling. I can't explain it exactly. And the light that I saw in that place, subhanallah, it's... And that's the shrine of Imam Hussain. I haven't been to Medina yet, but if that's the shrine of Imam Hussain, then goodness, what must it be like to visit Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You know, some people they think, you know, when saints are buried, that's it. You know, people that they don't have our belief. They just think it's a dead body in the ground. But the thing with the saints is when the saints are buried, or Awliya Allah as we call them, these are people whose internal reality was dissolved within the divine reality. Their physical bodies in their lives just become like a vehicle of the divine reality. So it's like when they are buried, they are not like, it's not like just a normal person who's buried. It's different. And so yes, the physical body obviously has passed away. But at the same time, that physical body, please excuse the noise in the background. That physical body that is buried in the ground was for the period of that person's life. It was a vehicle of the divine reality. So it's all the cells in the body would have been immersed within the divine light that Allah was bestowing upon that person. So it's like into oneness. It's like it's transformed. So even though the body is inanimate and is buried in the ground, it's just like the veils between this world and the heavens are thin at that point, at these holy places. I mean, this is why people visit them. It's not it's not, you know, some people misunderstand. You don't go there to worship someone who is buried in the ground, but you do go there to visit and feel some connection with the soul of someone who dedicated themselves to Allah and lived a life dedicated to Allah. And those places, because they contain the body of someone who was so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it actually changes the reality in these places. I mean, in the way that I could explain, for me, the word magical. Karbala is magical. But I don't mean that in like sorcery or something. I mean it in like the childlike way we say magical. It's something, it's just... It's like it is part of this world, but there's something different about it. It's not entirely like this. It doesn't really work the same way as things normally work in this world. So it's what we can do is go, subhanallah, and if you can visit some of these places, then visit them, because it's transformational. I also visited... No, when I say magical, I don't mean like, you know, trickery, and I don't mean like... I don't mean sorcery either. What I mean is the English word magical. Yeah, fantastic. It's something like that. It's beautiful. It's something which is not how we expect reality to be. You know, it's different. No, it's not like technology. It's spiritual, but it's just remarkable. Yeah, it is amazing. There's no other way. I was in a different place during my entire visit. It was really transformational. And you know, when I was there, before we came back, I mean, after the actual conference itself finished, I had the good fortune to okay, Rami, Assalamu alaikum. Before I left, after the conference had finished, we were taken to Najaf and Kufa, And again, these places are really amazing. I mean, well, I embraced Islam 20 years ago, so I found my purpose of life there, alhamdulillah. But no, I wish people would realise, because I mean, obviously Muslims in Iraq know, but and also in the Middle East and a lot of these places. But I wish people in the wider world would know just how amazing some of these places are, because often when we see on the news pictures of Iraq, they don't show it in a good light. And it's not just Iraq, I mean also a lot of Muslim countries. They don't show them in a good light, but there's amazing places in some of these countries. And it's a shame that people don't see the beauty of it, and also the beauty of the people themselves. I mean, the way I was hosted while I was over there, the adab, the akhlaq, the manners, the respect, it was beautiful to experience, and I have a lot of love for the people there. How about the sea? What about the sea? The sea is amazing, of course. Yeah. There are a lot of amazing places in this world, and you mentioned the sea. Yeah, of course, the natural world. The natural world is awesome and amazing. So, I mean, I love the mountains myself. I often, when I get a chance, I like to travel to the mountains, even in the UK. Also, when I was in Indonesia, we were taken around the mountains a lot. Mountains are magical as well. And you've got some very special places in the mountains. Also, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he used to travel up the mountain. He used to travel up the mountain and meditate in a cave before the revelation descended upon him. Yes, a cave. The cave on the side of the mountain. Because he always, I mean, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, it's a belief of Muslims, he was created for the purpose of being a prophet of Allah. So it's like his whole life he was chosen by Allah. So there was always something special about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, even before he started teaching Islam. And so as a child, he always felt something was wrong in the society he lived in. There were things that he was uncomfortable about. So yeah, the cave of Hira. So, you know, he travelled up to the cave and he used to reflect and meditate and pray. And after a while of doing this, he was visited by the angel Gabriel, who told him, yes, read in the name of your Lord, who created. And taught man what he knew not, through the use of the pen. One of the most beautiful verses in the Quran. And I love the fact that in that verse it says, through the use of the pen. I mean, the God who teaches you through the use of the pen. The focus in Islam is on education. Always, ever since the first revelation of the first verses of the Quran to be revealed, the focus in Islam has always been on education and on personal development, on learning and personal development. And of course, people who do this, they will have hopefully a positive impact on the people around them. And it's a very practical thing to do, and it brings many benefits, not just spiritual ones either, although obviously there's immense spiritual benefit in it. And it's quite interesting because when you understand Islam from this perspective, Islam doesn't seem, it's not like the religion that some people think it is, of rules and regulations. I mean, this is how some Muslims learn their religion in a madrasa, and they're told to recite things, often starting with the Quran, but also maybe hadiths and other things, and they have to recite them perfectly, and they learn by rote basically. And if they don't learn something, then, well, not in this country, but in other countries, they get beaten. This is one way of teaching, but this is not the way of tariqat. In tariqat, it's the way of the heart. It's about connecting and understanding things and learning from a teacher who learned from his teacher, and it's a transmission of knowledge and wisdom from heart to heart. The focus is on love. The focus isn't on getting things precisely, perfectly right. Because, I mean, we're not robots and we're not computers. And it's possible for us to do that. And some people are particularly gifted in it. But at the same time, even if you can remember things perfectly, you know, and memorize them in that way, that doesn't mean that you understand. So ultimately, you know, when we look at it like that, this focus in tariqat on love and transmission from heart to heart, it's a superior way of teaching, and it is a way of attraction. It's not a way of putting people off. Whereas if you teach people by rote and beat them, and if they're not happy learning, then it actually puts them off the religion. I've met many Muslims over the years who came into Islam through this system and were taught in madrasa, and they had bad experiences, and it put them off Islam. And some of them avoided mosques for years. Some of them avoided Islam for years. And, you know, it's something that, I mean, as a teacher, you have to be concerned about how you're portraying the religion and how you're teaching the religion. I mean, if you put people off it, then what are those people going to do when they grow up? I mean, you might get a handful of them that stick to what they were taught, and then they repeat the same thing parrot fashion to the next generation, and follow the same bad adab, and, you know, what, you know, beating children and stuff like that, just to indoctrinate them. But what do they really learn? What do any of them really learn? What kind of impression of religion do they have? Is this the way of the Rahmatul Alameen? The loving, compassionate one to all of the world? I mean, when I look at it from this angle, the only people I see like this are the Sufi or the Afani type teachers who transmit their religion through love, and they have compassion for people. They care about people genuinely, and if someone gets something wrong, they don't come down hard on them. They support them and encourage them and say, well, just try again, keep trying, eventually you'll get it. You know, there's no need to be harsh with people. I mean, Allah is Al-Rahman and Al-Rahim. He's also Al-Karim, the generous one. Al-Ghafur and Al-Ghafur, the forgiver and the greatly forgiving. So why do some teachers beat Islam into children, or think they are? I mean, it's not the way, and it will not stick. And this is why we are getting people who they leave Islam. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I'm confronted by Christian pastors and preachers who are trying to convert me to Christianity. And they often bring up cases where Muslims have left Islam and joined Christianity. And my first question is, what did they leave? What did they leave? I can't imagine many of them would leave if they had a loving, caring sheikh as their teacher. But if they had a family that beat them, if they had Mulanas in a madrasa that beat them, and always come down harshly on them, and says there's no way you're going to get to Jannah unless you do this exactly as I'm telling you. Is it any wonder they leave? I mean, what did they really leave in? Were they really leaving Islam? Is that Islam? Is that the religion of Rahmah? Even the Prophet Muhammad says, when you call upon Allah, call upon Ar-Rahman. Why Ar-Rahman? Why did the Prophet Muhammad focus, out of all the 99 names, on the name Ar-Rahman? Why? Because Ar-Rahman means the loving, compassionate God. Prophet Muhammad was focusing on this. And then you have the hadith in Bukhari where it says, on the throne of Allah, my compassion overcomes my anger. Why is this in a hadith? Again, the focus is on compassion. God is love. God is compassion. God is forgiving. And if you think about it, if this wasn't the case, if Allah wasn't these things, this earth would already be finished.
You do that, not me.
I mean, the state of us human beings today, how we treat each other, how we treat this earth, how we treat the other communities of life living on this earth.
Just drain the water.
If Allah wasn't Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, the most compassionate and most kind, if Allah wasn't Al-Ghafur and Al-Ghaffar, the forgiving and the most forgiving, do you think any of us would still be alive? Do you think any of this would still be here? SubhanAllah. Don't be too deep, just walk. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think, we have to live. No, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, can be a bit too deep for some people, but I'm deliberately emphasizing this because there are people out there that portray Islam in quite a different way, and it's very
Hello.
off-putting.
Hello.
Hello, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
It's very off-putting.
I'm in the picture.
You're in the picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's my daughter Elizabeth. Alhamdulillah. I mean, it's very off-putting for a lot of people, and people have left Islam over the years because of the way some people teach what they think is Islam. But I think some people they get it wrong, and they over focus on the wrong things. Okay, well, unless anybody has any questions, then I think I will start the zikr.